There's a necessity for collaboration, and we think that the council we've pulled together represents not only at an individual level, but at an organisational level, an opportunity to really drive that collaboration across the transport sector. And the reason why we think Zemo is well placed to launch it and help manage it is that we've got a 20-year record of partnership working, whether that's with government, whether that's with the private sector or the third sector, or indeed all together at the same time.
What we urgently need at this stage in the net zero transition is a credible and detailed delivery roadmap. Zemo Partnership, as a key partner of government, has played a central role in the decarbonisation of transport since 2003. Zemo uniquely brings together industry, experts and government.
The fact is that if you've been a politician for a long time, you discover two very important things. One is you should never leave governments to make decisions about industry because they always get them wrong. And the second is that governments don't want problems, they want answers. And if you think of those two things together, if the industry doesn't provide the answers, then the incoming government will have to do things itself. And it will get it wrong. That's not a party political thing. It doesn't matter who is the incoming government, they'll still get it wrong because they don't know about the fundamentals of delivery. And that's why the relationship between the government and the doers has to be as good as you can make it. And the whole idea of this council is that we bring the doers together so that we can work out how best to deliver, because we know we have to deliver. And I want just to emphasise for a moment about the having to deliver bit. The point about climate change, which people forget, is that it gets worse every year. Whatever we do, it's going to get worse every year until we've actually conquered it. And then one has some hope of pulling things back. But until that happens, it will get worse every year. And that means that every year, more and more people will be affected. And they will be more and more angry that people haven't done it 20 years ago. Even though 20 years ago, they spent their time trying to stop people doing it. What they will say is, why didn't business do it? We have to be all in it together because the government will only listen to us if we're all in it together.
As Lord Deben has already told us, this is not optional. The more we delay, the more the transition will cost, and the more adaptive measures we will need to put in place. The cost of insurance and all other costs will go up. Businesses understand that. So we need to move fast to seize the opportunities. And what we need is an ambitious industrial strategy would act as a catalyst for new technologies and innovation and bring jobs and manufacturing to the UK.
And let me say what a delight it is to be back with John. So this is the first event I've done with John in my new role. And let me also make note that it's the first time I think I've ever worn a tie and John hasn't. So those corporates that are committed to it, or those corporates that will be made to commit to cutting these emissions, are looking seriously at now what you can do. And what's my interest in this Zemo partnership is very simply that for most corporates here in the UK, transport emissions are probably the quickest way for us to actually tackle this in the wider supply chain. For the business community trying to do something about this, they are being met by a series of confusing signals from government. And in particular in the last year, the speech that the Prime Minister made in Downing Street in September last year was tremendously damaging on this. So very simply, and I'm sure you'll hear this from my fellow panel members in a minute, it does not make sense to say to the country, we will implement a mandate on the manufacturers of electric vehicles or vehicles, and then tell the consumer, don't worry, you can wait.
And I do want to start with a really positive message, and by saying that UK Automotive is actually leading the transition to zero-emission cars, vans, trucks and buses. And I pick up Claire's point, this is not just about cars and vans. We need to try and transition the whole industry. We work even on off-highway and try and make sure that the big opportunities in UK there, that we can do it. So really, we are delivering, but we can't deliver alone, which is why this initiative is absolutely critical for us. To move from target setting to delivery now. But regulatory framework they matter. The ZEB mandate gives us our drive forward, but we need to make it work.
Without this partnership and without this plan, there is a real risk that decarbonisation imposes unsustainable costs on businesses, public services, and ultimately households.
One of the things that I'm very keen about this new council is that we're trying to set an example by not allowing the industry to be siloed. And if we don't allow the industry to be siloed, I think we have some chance of making sure that the government isn't siloed.
We also believe that transport decarbonisation is undermined by a singular focus on tailpipe emissions. More options would be available if policies were technology neutral and used a life cycle approach.
One of the things I think is so important is that we recognise that this whole battle is going to be won by everybody. And that means that we don't divide people off and say, well, there are NGOs over there who are great campaigners, and then there are politicians, and then there are people in the industry. We really do have to learn about things from every point of view. And so I'm very pleased that we're going to start this panel by asking Dr. Doug Parr, a very old friend, Chief Scientist of Greenpeace.
You know, for Greenpeace, we are about creating space for political space for the right things to thrive. Tackling climate change is about the public interest inserting itself into a system where vested interests will inevitably want to prevent change. Just I want to say a thing about demand reduction. It looks like we're getting a new Labour government. They recently put out a policy document which said we will set targets for modal shift to lower emissions from the transport sector. But if they're going to do that, then they'll need some measures to make that happen. Finally, I'm just going to say this once and let people shudder. Pay as you drive. Sooner or later, we're going to have to open up that conversation as we shift to electric vehicles.
As you move into delivery, you move into technology and to difficult questions to ask. And can I just agree about road pricing? There's one issue that we know is going to happen. There is going to be road pricing. So stop making it a terrifying thing and start working out how best to do it.
But I just wanted to pause and think about how far we've come. We host an event with over 80 different unique electric vehicles from 41 different manufacturers. And it just shows the pace of change now that we're facing.
It's all behaviour change policy. Every single policy that we're talking about, technical, non-technical, pricing, regulation, it's all behaviour change policy. But in terms of actually thinking about how to make all of those policies politically acceptable, because that's what we're talking about in terms of consumer journey, then we need to be very honest as well about the scale of the problem and the trade-offs that need to be made.
What consumers say to us, you know, they don't want to be preached at, but they want the right information, they want accurate information, and they want that to help them. Now, luckily for us at the AA, when you actually ask them, well, who do you trust to do that? They do see us as a trusted party. Our members aren't hostile to EVs at all, but they are hesitant. And probably realistically with good reason. You know, this is the biggest change for 50 years, 100 years. So I think we've got to understand that as well and help them along the journey. And certainly that's something I'm looking forward to trying to contribute along with the council and all the colleagues here.
So the council will provide strategic oversight, but the delivery roadmap itself will be informed by a series of devolved and sectoral roadmaps looking at specifically personal mobility, public mobility, and moving goods and services. We're currently in the middle of a major project for the Welsh Government, decarbonising commercial vehicles in Wales.
So we've got to get together to make sure we decide what it is we want to say to government. And so that's why this unity is absolutely crucial if we're going to get what we need to get, which is a proper delivery mechanism which takes the whole industry together and which is sensibly thought through for the real problems that we have, and where government buys into it so that they can provide those things which we can't provide for ourselves. That's the mix that we really have to do. And if we do that, we then begin to come to that fourth and last point, which is that what we then begin to do is to do this in the most cost-effective way. Because in the end, this can either be relatively cheap, in the sense that we do it in the course of business, or it can be extremely expensive because it's forced upon us at a time that we're not ready by a government that doesn't understand and asks us to do things we can't do.